The palace is silent tonight. A different silence. Not the peaceful hush of a sleeping court, but the thick, strained quiet of a held breath. In the royal bedchamber, the air is heavy with the scent of expensive wax, sweet rushes on the floor, and a faint, clinging trace of fear. A woman stands by the window, her silhouette a stark cutout against the moonlit Thames. Anne of Cleves, Queen of England for 6 months. Tonight, she is waiting. Her hands, clasped tightly before her, are ice cold. The ermine trim of her gown feels like the weight of a continent. Every rustle of the tapestry in the draught, every distant footfall of a guard, is a hammer blow against her heart. She is waiting for the king. But this is no eager bride awaiting her husband. This is a prisoner awaiting the executioner's verdict. The door will open. He will enter. And in his eyes, she will see her fate. Will it be the royal bed? Or the royal axe? For Henry VIII, this is not a marriage. It is a crime scene. And his new wife is the evidence of a deception. The deal has gone bad. The portrait, the promises, the political alliance sealed with her name, all of it is ash on his tongue. He feels a rage, cold and calculating, beginning to simmer. He wanted a treasure, a jewel to outshine all his others. He feels he has been delivered a counterfeit. He strides through the torchlit corridors of the Palace of Placentia, Greenwich. His girth fills the space, his footsteps heavy, each one a proclamation of his power and his displeasure. The courtiers melt from his path like shadows before a lantern. They have seen this look before. The set of the jaw, the narrowing of the small, pale eyes. It is the look that preceded the fall of Wolsey, the destruction of More, the blood on the scaffold at the Tower. He reaches the door. The guards stiffen. Inside, and does not turn. She hears the handle, the creak of the iron hinge. The smell of him reaches her first, ointment of rosewater and civet, trying and failing to mask the sour, meaty smell of his infected leg, the decay beneath the velvet and jewels. He stops. He looks at her. The candlelight flickers across her face, across the fine, plain Flemish linen of her hood. He does not see a duchess. He does not see a queen. He sees a problem, a thing that offends him, a thing that must be removed. His voice, when it comes, is low, a rumble of distant thunder. "Madam." She turns. She curtsies, deep and correct. She meets his gaze. In that moment, the trap is sprung. The cruelty has begun. Not with a shout, not with a blow, but with a look of utter, devastating rejection. The story of this cruelty begins not in a bedchamber, but in a council room, thick with the smoke of ambition and desperation. The year is 1539. Henry is adrift. His third queen, Jane Seymour, the only one to give him a living son, is dead. The grave is fresh. The nursery, occupied only by the fragile Prince Edward, feels empty. England is isolated, a Protestant island in a sea of hostile Catholic powers. France, the Holy Roman Empire, the Pope himself, all baying for the heretic king's downfall. Henry needs an alliance, a shield. His chief minister, Thomas Cromwell, his fixer, his man of business, has the solution. Look to the German duchies, to the Schmalkaldic League. Look to Cleves, a small but strategically vital Protestant state. Duke John III has 2 sisters. One of them is Anne. The deal is struck on paper, in dry diplomatic language. Portraits are commissioned. Hans Holbein the Younger, the master, is sent. His task is not just to paint, but to sell, to convince. He stands before and in the stiff Cleves court. He does not flatter in the crude sense. He paints truth, but a selective truth. He captures a calm, dignified young woman of 24, her hands folded, her gaze steady, her features placid and pleasant. She wears the severe, modest German fashion. The portrait is a masterpiece of quiet assurance. It is sent to Henry. The king studies the panel. He sees serenity. He sees fertility. He sees a political solution made flesh. "We are pleased," he declares. The contract is sealed. Anne's fate is locked. She begins her journey to England, a pawn moving across the chessboard of Europe. She does not speak English. She knows nothing of the English court, a viper's nest of glittering malice. She knows only her duty. She arrives at Deal in Kent in December. The wind howls off the channel, a bitter, unwelcome greeting. Henry, ever the romantic, ever the performer, decides on a mask. A surprise meeting. He rides to Rochester with a band of boisterous lords, disguised as a commoner, to claim a gift from his new queen. It is a game that delighted Catherine of Aragon, that charmed Anne Boleyn. It is a test. He bursts into her chamber, and, weary from travel, surrounded by strangers speaking a foreign tongue, is watching a bull baiting from the window. A man in a cloak approaches her. He tries to embrace her, to kiss her. She, a modest, sheltered woman, recoils. She turns her back. She continues to watch the dogs below. The courtiers freeze. The laughter dies. Henry retreats. He changes into his royal silks, encrusted with gems. He returns, revealed as the king, and, flustered, falls to her knees. She explains later, through a translator, that she did not expect to see him thus. In her country, kings did not play such games. But the damage is done. Later, he confides to a close aide, his voice thick with disgust. "I see nothing in this woman as men report of her," he says, "and I marvel that wise men would make such report as they have done." The first seed is planted, the seed of repudiation. He feels cheated. The portrait, he will soon claim, was a lie. The woman is not as reported. She is, to him, a Flanders mare. The wedding goes ahead. Politics demand it. On January 6, 1540, at Greenwich, Anne of Cleves becomes Queen of England. She wears cloth of gold. She smiles politely. That night, the king performs his duty, or tries to. He will later state, in the most humiliatingly public way possible, that the marriage was never consummated, that he found her body so disordered and indisposed that he could not bring himself to do it, that he left her as good a maid as he found her. This is the opening salvo of his cruelty, not private disappointment, but the strategic, brutal crafting of a public narrative. He is building a case. He is painting her as undesirable, unfit, unqueenly. He is preparing the court, the country, and God for what he must do next. And, trapped in a golden cage, surrounded by a language she cannot understand, begins to sense the ground crumbling beneath her feet. The king's displeasure is a chill that seeps through the stone walls of every palace. Courtiers who once bowed deep now offer thin, pitying smiles. The lavish gifts slow. His visits cease. And in the shadows, Thomas Cromwell watches his grand design unravel. His enemy, the Duke of Norfolk, sees his chance. Norfolk has a niece, a young, vivacious, flirtatious girl named Catherine Howard. The king's eye is already wandering, seeking the solace and cannot provide. The stage is set not just for an annulment, but for a destruction. The court is a living organism, and it feels a change in its bloodstream. The king's favour is the sun, and where it shines, careers bloom. Where it withdraws, a frost sets in. For Anne, the frost is creeping. She tries. God knows, she tries. She attempts to learn English, to play cards, to dance in the English style. But every effort feels clumsy, a step behind the intricate, vicious rhythm of the court. She is too earnest, too plain, too German. Her apartments, once thronged with sycophants, grow quiet. The smells change. The perfumes of visiting nobles are replaced by the faint, metallic scent of damp stone from the Thames and the ever-present beeswax of candles that burn for no audience. The sounds are hushed whispers behind fans, the rustle of silk as people turn away. The only constant is the low, persistent throb of fear in her own chest. Henry's cruelty is not the hot, passionate brutality he showed Anne Boleyn. This is colder, more administrative. It is the cruelty of erasure. He begins to speak of her not as his wife, but as his sister. He lavishes attention on the young Catherine Howard, a bright, chattering bird in stark contrast to unsteady, somber presence. He commissions new, less flattering portraits of Anne, spreading the visual propaganda of his displeasure. The Flanders mare slur, whether he ever spoke the exact words or not, becomes the whispered truth of the corridors. And through it all, Anne must sit at his side at state dinners. She must attend mass. She must smile. To do otherwise would be treason. She is living a public death, a slow, ceremonial UN queening. The psychological torture is exquisite. Every day is a performance where she must pretend not to see the dagger poised above her neck. Thomas Cromwell, the architect of this disaster, is frantic. He knows his power, perhaps his life, is tied to this union. He corners the king, tries to reason. "You must go to her more often, Your Grace," he urges. "The alliance with Cleves is vital for our security." Henry's response is a volcanic eruption of wounded vanity and political will. He spews forth a litany of grievances, meticulously documented by his secretaries, a dossier for the annulment to come. He claims a loathing for her person. He speaks of a pre-contract she might have had in Cleves, a legal technicality that could invalidate the marriage. Most damningly, and most humiliatingly, he insists on his own incapacity, but only with her. "My conscience," he thunders, "will not permit me to continue. The marriage is not good in the eyes of God." This is the key. Henry's conscience had demanded he break with Rome to marry Anne Boleyn. Now, that same conscience demands he be rid of Anne of Cleves. It is the ultimate weapon, impossible to refute. Who can argue with a king's direct line to the Almighty? Cromwell's fate is sealed. On a bright June morning, during a Privy Council meeting, the Duke of Norfolk and the smiling, treacherous Bishop Gardiner spring the trap. Cromwell is accused of treason, of heresy, of freeing radicals, and of the ultimate crime, foisting an unsuitable queen upon the king. He is arrested, dragged from the council chamber, his pleas echoing off the walls. He will go to the Tower, and to the block, without trial. His last letter to Henry, begging for mercy, is signed "Your Grace's most miserable prisoner and poor slave." The king reads it without expression. The fixer has been fixed. The stage is now clear for the final act against the Queen. And, in her rooms, here's the news of Cromwell's fall. The messenger's face tells her everything. The last pillar of her support in England has crumbled to dust. The axe that took Cromwell's head is now being sharpened for the severing of her marriage. She is utterly alone. Henry moves with a chilling, bureaucratic speed. A convocation of clergy is assembled. They are presented with the king's scruples of conscience. The evidence is laid out: the non-consummation, the alleged pre-contract, the king's internal dislike. The churchmen, well versed in survival, agree. The marriage is declared null and void. It never existed. On July 6, 1540, Anne is summoned. She is not brought before a public court, but to a private chamber. The documents are before her. The annulment is presented not as a request, but as a fait accompli. She is informed that she is no longer Queen of England. She is offered terms, a generous settlement. She will be given a staggering annual income, several estates including Hever Castle, the former home of the Boleyns, a detail dripping with cruel irony, and a new title, the King's beloved sister. She will be rich, independent, but she must stay in England, renounce all ties to Cleves, and agree to the annulment. This is the moment of supreme danger. One wrong word, one hint of protest, and she could follow Cromwell to the Tower. Catherine of Aragon had fought and died in lonely exile, and Boleyn had fought and lost her head. Anne of Cleves looks at the documents. She looks at the faces of the men surrounding her. Norfolk, Gardiner, faces tight with anticipation. They expect hysterics. They expect defiance. They are ready for it. She picks up the quill. Her voice, when she speaks her assent, is calm, clear. She signs. She surrenders her crown, her title, her dignity as a wife, with a steady hand. She chooses survival. It is an act of breathtaking intelligence and courage. She disarms Henry's cruelty not by confronting it, but by acquiescing to it with a grace that robs him of his dramatic triumph. The beast is denied its roar. 3 weeks later, Henry marries Catherine Howard. The court explodes in a frenzy of celebration, a deliberate, garish spectacle to erase the memory of the plain woman from Cleves. The music is louder, the wine sweeter, the dresses more revealing. It is a slap in the face, delivered to an entire nation. And Anne, she leaves court. She rides to her new home at Richmond. The people line the roads. They do not jeer. They pity her. Some even cheer. They call her the good lady. They see what the court cannot, a woman who navigated the king's malice and emerged with her life. But what kind of life? She settles into a strange, twilight existence. The king's beloved sister. A princess without a country, a former queen without a throne. She is invited to court for holidays, a walking ghost of Henry's past, forced to curtsy to the giggling child queen, Catherine Howard, who now sits in her chair. The humiliation is relentless, a slow drip of poison. She must smile, exchange pleasantries, pretend all is well. She must smell the familiar scents of the court, hear the same laughter, and know she has no part in it. Then, a twist of fate so sharp it could draw blood. Not 2 years later, the music for Catherine Howard stops. The young queen's past indiscretions are uncovered, then her present ones. She is accused of treasonous adultery. This time, Henry's cruelty is red-hot, furious. Catherine Howard is dragged screaming from the Great Hall, her fate sealed. She will lose her head on the same green where her cousin, Anne Boleyn, died. And who does Henry visit, in the stunned, terrified silence that follows Catherine's arrest? He rides to the home of Anne of Cleves. He comes to her, this man who claims such physical revulsion, and suggests, over wine and fine meats, that he might take her back, that they might remarry. The air in the room grows cold. Anne's ladies-in-waiting freeze. The fire crackles in the hearth, and looks at the bloated, pain-racked tyrant before her. She remembers the look in his eyes in the bedchamber. She remembers the public shame, the annulment, the years of being a royal afterthought. She has seen the corpses of his other wives in her mind's eye every day. She sips her wine. She offers him a gentle, unimpeachable smile. She speaks of her affection for him as a brother. She speaks of her contentment with her current state. She says no, without saying no. It is a masterpiece of political evasion, a rejection so perfectly packaged in loyalty that he cannot be angered by it. He leaves, frustrated, and closes the door behind him. For the first time, she holds power over Henry Tudor, and she has used it to save her own life, a second time. The years unspool, a quieter tapestry woven with threads of survival. Anne of Cleves, the Flanders mare, outlives the king who spurned her. She watches from a distance as Henry's final marriage to Catherine Parr becomes a tense, theological battleground, the queen nearly falling to the same machinations that consumed her predecessors. She receives the news of Henry's death in January 1547 with a calm face. The great engine of cruelty has finally shuddered to a halt. She is, at last, safe. But what is the shape of such safety? Her homes, rumoured to be Hever Castle, Bletchingley, the country estate at Dartford, are comfortable, even luxurious. Her coffers are full. She is the richest woman in England after the royal family. She hosts dinners, plays cards, embroiders. She becomes a fixture of the new Protestant court of the boy King Edward VI, a respected elder stateswoman of sorts, a living relic of a turbulent past. She is known for her charity, her steady temperament, her love of fine clothes and gambling. She seems, to all outward appearances, to have won. Yet, the psychological fallout of those 6 months in 1540 is a ghost that never leaves her chambers. It lingers in the careful way she phrases every letter to the crown, always affirming her loyalty. It whispers in the nightmares that surely must have come, the memory of that door opening, the king's assessing stare, the abyss of political annihilation yawning at her feet. Henry's cruelty was not a single act, but a continuum. The brutal rejection, the humiliating annulment, the consignment to a gilded irrelevance. She was made to feel, in the most fundamental way, unwanted. Not just as a wife, but as a person of worth. To be publicly deemed so physically repulsive that a king famed for his appetites claimed impotence at your side. This was a scar no title or estate could erase. Her relationship with the Tudor dynasty remains a delicate, bizarre dance. Under the Catholic reign of Mary I, her position grows precarious once more. Her Protestant faith and her connection to Henry's Reformation make her suspect. Yet, she navigates this, too, with quiet diplomacy, avoiding the stake by a combination of wealth, perceived harmlessness, and that same steady intelligence. She is present at Mary's marriage to Philip of Spain, a spectral figure from a previous act. She is a survivor, but survival in the Tudor court came at the cost of a perpetual, low-grade vigilance, a part of one's soul forever barricaded. She dies in 1557, during Mary's reign, of a sickness likely cancer. She leaves a will that is a testament to a life of careful calculation and unexpected warmth. She remembers her servants generously. She leaves jewels to Mary and her half-sister Elizabeth, a final gesture of political grace. She requests burial in Westminster Abbey, a place for kings and queens. But she is not buried as a queen. Her tomb is modest, located in a then obscure part of the abbey. The inscription is simple, recording her as Anne of Cleves, Queen of England. It is a statement of fact, but a contested one, a ghost of a title. The historical debate surrounding Anne of Cleves and Henry's cruelty is a murky one, a Rorschach test for how we view power, agency, and trauma. On one side are the traditionalists who see Anne as the luckiest of Henry's wives. She kept her head, lived in luxury, and died in her bed. In this view, Henry's rejection was a blessing in disguise, a kindness even. His cruelty, they argue, was merely the exercise of royal prerogative. He provided for her handsomely, and she seemed content. But this is a view from the throne room, not from the woman's chambers. It ignores the profound violence of public shaming. Modern historians, particularly those interested in gender and power, dissect the annulment proceedings as a form of state-sponsored psychological torture. The investigation into the non-consummation was grotesquely invasive. Henry's counselors questioned them separately, demanding intimate details, and was forced to discuss her most private self, her body, as evidence in a case against her own validity. This was not a clean legal severance. It was a violation. Then there is the question of the portrait. Was Holbein's painting a deception? The evidence suggests not. Holbein was a meticulous realist. He showed what was there, a calm, dignified woman with a strong face. The disappointment likely stemmed from a fatal cocktail of Henry's own fantasies, cultural clash, and his deteriorating health. His leg ulcer was worsening, making him morbidly obese and prone to violent mood swings. The man who met and was not the athletic prince who courted Catherine of Aragon, nor even the passionate king who pursued Anne Boleyn. He was a sick, paranoid tyrant, and he expected a nubile, flirtatious court beauty to distract him from his pain. And stolid, Germanic demeanor offered no such escape. The cruelty, therefore, may have been born from his own monstrous self-pity, projected onto a blameless woman. And what of Anne's famed acquiescence? Her quick agreement to the annulment is often cited as proof she was relieved. But this overlooks the terror of her position. She had seen the alternative. Her wisdom was the wisdom of a prisoner staring at the executioner's axe. Her calm signature was not contentment. It was the ultimate act of self-preservation under duress. To interpret it otherwise is to mistake survival for satisfaction. The greatest mystery lies in Anne's own heart. Her letters are formal, correct, devoid of personal revelation. Did she carry a secret love for the king? Almost certainly not. Did she harbor a bitter hatred? If she did, she buried it so deep it left no trace. Her subsequent life of charitable works and apparent ease could be read as genuine contentment, or as the meticulous construction of a harmless persona, a fortress built to ensure she was never again a target. Her reported enjoyment of Henriette's discomfort when courting her as a sister after Catherine Howard's fall suggests a keen, quiet sense of poetic justice, a flicker of the woman who understood the game all too well. In the end, the story of Henry VIII and Anne of Cleves is not a romance, nor a simple tragedy of a rejected bride. It is a case study in the slow, cold violence of structural power. Henry did not need to shout or threaten. He had only to withdraw his favour to set the legal and ecclesiastical machinery in motion, to let the whispers do their work. The cruelty was in the system, and he was its chief operator. Anne's genius was in understanding that system well enough to slip through its jaws, scarred but whole. The final unsettling truth lies not in the palaces, but in the quiet country house where Anne spent her last days. Imagine her there, an older woman, sitting by a fire. The silence around her is no longer the strained quiet of the royal bedchamber. It is the silence of hard-won peace. But in the crackle of the logs, does she still hear the creak of that door? In the shadows cast by the flames, does she still see the looming shape of the king, his eyes performing that ruthless calculation? She lived. She thrived, by any material measure. But to be the subject of a king's disgust is a kind of death. And perhaps, for Anne of Cleves, the long, comfortable aftermath was simply the haunting.